Hi, I'm Bill from CJ Pony Parts. If you read our blog or follow me on Facebook, you know my long-term goal for my 2015 Mustang GT is to eventually put it on an air suspension system, but that goal is still a ways down the road, so I've started looking into lowering springs. I want to lower the car for performance as well as looks, but I'm not looking to slam it to the ground because one of my hobbies is charity road rallies. These road rallies have put me on some really sketchy roads over the years, so having a little bit of ground clearance is definitely going to be a must. The spring I keep coming back to is the Steeda Sport Spring. These seem to be the perfect combination of what I'm looking for, so today I'm going to install a set on my 2015 Mustang GT. Steeda engineers their springs in-house to give you a perfect combination of ride quality along with performance and that lowered look. These springs are going to lower your 2015 GT Fastback approximately 1 inch all the way around, which will give you a nice lowered stance without going too extreme. For this installation, you'll need a lift and a pole jack or a jack-and-jack stands, 1/2 inch ratchet or impact gun, 15mm socket, 18mm socket, 21mm socket, 24mm socket, 3/4 inch ratchet, 13mm socket, 17mm wrench, panel removal tool, hammer, and a spring compressor. You'll want to start the installation by getting the car off the ground and taking off all 4 wheels. Next thing we'll do then is remove the ABS line from the strut. Now remove the nut that holds the sway bar to the strut. To get to the spindle nuts, we have to remove the caliper for clearance. The caliper comes off by 2 bolts, one down here and one up top here. I will pull the caliper off of the rotor, set it back here on the K-member. Now we can separate the spindle from the strut by removing these 2 nuts and these 2 bolts here. We took the rotor off so you can see it better, but you don't actually have to do it to remove this. These bolts are pretty much pressed in, so what you want to do now, put the nut back on the end, just a couple threads, and tap it out. Now we can move up into the engine bay and separate the strut from the strut tower by removing these 3 nuts. After you remove the 3rd nut, make sure you're holding onto the strut or it will fall. The next step now is removing the spring from our factory strut. To do that, you want to pick up a spring compressor. If you don't have one of these, which most of you probably won't, this is a tool you can rent at most auto parts store for only a couple bucks. Put the compressor onto our coil spring. Now you can remove the strut mount. And release compression from the spring. Now we'll want to compress our new spring. This will be much easier to compress than the one we just removed because they are much shorter. Make sure the spring is seated in the proper spot on the saddle at the bottom. Make sure everything is lined up. We can decompress the spring. And our new assembly is ready to reinstall in the car. I'll put the strut up into place. You put the spindle back into the strut. Put the nuts on, then tighten them down. You can hammer these in, but you really don't have to. Tighten the nuts down will pull the threads in. I'll put our caliper back on. Restart the end link for the sway bar. Reinstall the clips for the ABS line. I want to repeat the process on the other side and move on to the rear. To do the rear, we're going to have to lower the rear subframe. So if you're putting it on jack stands or a jack, make sure the subframe can still easily drop. We're going to clearance a few things before we can do that. We'll start by removing the brake bracket here and disconnecting the shock from the body. And you put a pull jack or a normal jack into place on the subframe. Get it tight so you feel it just start to lift. Now you can work on the subframe bolts. Start with these two small bolts in the front here. These, you can take them all the way out, but you really don't have to, and they can kind of be a pain to line up when you're done. Just loosen them up enough this bracket can pull down. We'll start with the front subframe bolt. Now the rear. Now we can lower it down. Now we're going to pull down the arm a little bit to release the spring and remove it from the car. You can remove the shock. There's two bolts down here if you want a little more room, but you can get it out with the shock in place. There's a specific place the rear spring is going to sit. If you don't have it seated properly, it could screw up your ride height. See, there's a cutout in the insulator. And with that installed, so that's right up in there. And the bottom part of the spring, we'll get you close up in a second, but if you look right here, there's actually a cutout in the bottom of the spring. Perch is going to sit right in there. Put our new spring in. Again, keep that towards the back so it sits right in where it goes. Now what you want to do, because this spring is shorter, use your jack or pull jack and then lift it up into place. If you look for this little cutout again, you'll see the end of the spring insulator right here, and we can see the spring is up against it. We know it's seated properly. I can put it all the way up and reinstall our subframe bolts. Put the subframe bolts up into place. I recommend starting them by hand, get a few turns, make sure they're lined up properly before you tighten them down. Put the rear in, now we'll put the front in. Now with the shock mount back into place, there's two little studs the shock will go underneath here. You have to put the brake bracket back on. And repeat the process on the other side, reinstall your wheels, and your installation's finished. The Steeda Sport Springs were a perfect choice for me. They're giving me that nice low look that I wanted without slamming the car to the ground, so I still have ground clearance. The ride quality is great, and I love the wheel well gap. The car is nice and even now and looks great. Installation, same as all Springs, is pretty straightforward. Take you roughly about 2 hours from top to bottom and be back on the road in no time. For more installation videos for your 2015 Mustang, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check out cjponyparts.com for the best selection of 2015 Mustang parts.